All right. Lifestyle investing where we invest base off our lifestyle to build future lifestyle. Mike, myself, and we got a fellow with a nice shirt in the house.
Yes, I know. It matches the weather.
I got some ladies on there.
Some hula girls.
Oh, yeah.
I get more compliments on this shirt. It's funny.
That's awesome.
Wish I
We
had
got Jamie in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a quick intro?
I will.
Since he's your buddy?
Yeah, friend of mine.
Let's do it.
Known him for a little over 4 years. I know you're a business owner. I've been in your beautiful home. I don't know too much about your business. But I just know that you are very compassionate. You're a caring person. I know you're successful, but you wouldn't know that to hear the way you talk. It's just I know that because of personal stuff you shared with me. So I see the humility that you are a man who leads with your heart, and I know that. And I'm excited to hear your story because any entrepreneur has had to go through a lot of forks in the road to get to where you're at. So that's really what tonight's about. And just awesome dude. I'm excited to hear his story. Just because like with the last guy that we had that I knew as a personal friend, I'm like, you're in construction, right? And he's like, no. I am in truck repair. And I'm like, oh. Okay, well, tell me about it because I have no idea.
That's fun.
Totally
Because I don't know I think you have something to do with houses, but I'm not sure if it's siding or windows.
Home improvements.
Okay. Yeah. See, I was thinking it was siding or windows or something.
It is. It's siding and windows.
Oh, siding and windows. Okay.
And sometimes it can be roofs and some other things too.
Okay.
But mainly windows and then siding, and then it kind of flows from there.
Okay. Well, I think Bernie may have a question for you, but I've got questions too. So, do you have something you want to ask?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's kind of start with it. Actually, first question that I have, you're telling me that you got into the family business, right? Which was a brokerage? Was it through transactions or was it more financing for real estate? What was that business?
Well, no. That was a buddy of mine. That was somebody with the real estate. But yeah, my father started West Coast Vinyl, and he started in 1972.
Got it.
Yeah, and
so growing up as a kid, you were kind of
I was around it and around the sales guys, and they were kind of a crazy group. And my dad had and when all this happened, he drank a lot, and drinking and even some drugs runs in my family. And about at least this is the story I heard. When I was little, he came home drunk one time, and I ran over to him, and he grabbed me, and I said, "You stink," and I ran to my mother. I don't remember this. And my dad said, "My son doesn't even want me to hold him.
Wow.
I'm done." And he just quit drinking. And it's weird because when I quit, it was a lot harder than that. But that was it. And then he took that energy, and he always worked, but he got focused and started this business with another gentleman named Gene Montgomery. And Gene was a crook, to say the least. I mean, he even had the FBI looking for him. He was pretty bad.
Oh, wow.
And so my dad and him, they had, had the business going, and finally, it was getting bad with Gene, so my dad had to cut ties with him. And so he had to buy him out, and things were kind of upside down. And if I remember the story right, he borrowed, which was a lot of money back then, $10,000 from grandparents to buy him out. And once he got him out of there and focused and got that thing the way it was supposed to be and not doing all this crap, I mean, where they were lying to customers and doing that, running the business the way you're supposed to, it started to go up. And when the mid-70s hit and the energy crisis came, and they were giving some kind of grants or money back for home improvements or energy or something like that. Yep. And of course, they had the big gas crisis and all that. Yep. But the business just exploded. And as a matter of fact, kind of a funny story. My dad was making about $50,000 a year back then, and when it was about 1975 or 76, he made $300,000, and this is in the 70s. Wow. And it went from 50 to 300, and it was the IRS, especially back then, they were like the Gestapo, and they said, "There's no way you were making $50,000 and then in 1 year made 300. You had to be lying." So they audited him. And this is where my dad kind of developed a pretty bad hatred for the government. It brought me up that way too. You know, I'm kind of the opposite of Glenn. But he got audited so many times. I mean, he told me they were coming into the shop. He had to throw them out. He came home one time. They were standing on the stoop. It was crazy. And they audited him for like 6 years in a row. And finally, this accountant, my dad's real loyal to people if you know, they're loyal to him. And so they wrote a letter to him and said, listen, my client is doing everything he's supposed to, and you are harassing him. And finally, you know, they let go, and then that was it. And they never really bothered him after that.
Nice. And he was clean, which makes sense.
He was total clean, you know,
right.
but it developed a pretty nasty.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was little, he brought me up. You know, he said, there's good people in government, but man, they're rotten. And he brought me up so I always kind of had not much of a liking for the federal government. So,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so when did you take it over, and how did that all work out?
Yeah. So it basically
because it's not the same thing. You're not doing vinyl.
Well, I'm doing vinyl windows, but
vinyl windows. Okay.
So he actually he had the first vinyl storm window in Washington State. So what they did is, instead of replacing the windows, they would have an exterior window that went over the aluminum window or the wood window. And they had to explain, people were like, a plastic window? Are you kidding me? And they had to really do a big presentation, you know, and explain to them, you know, how it's a non-conductive material and how it's going to change things. And it amazed me, because back then my dad, you know, before he started making a lot of money, he told me he drove, after the jobs were sold, he drove to the customers' houses and would get all the money up front. And I remember him telling me this. I'm like, there's no friggin' way you could do that today. You couldn't do it. But he would collect all the money before they even did the job. And of course, you know, they did the job, but it just amazed me.
Right, because now it would just be a scam.
Yeah. And that he did that. But
Right, well, And send me the money first, and then I'll come do the job. Yeah. But it's a different world.
It is. And he actually built the windows and everything and manufactured. So it was kind of nice. I mean, he had both. He had the manufacturing and the sales part. And he was down on Washington Street. And then as he built the place up, he built a 10,000 square foot place on Orchard Street, and then we built a house. We were over on kind of by Stewart Junior High, and then we built a house in Fircrest, and it was a 5,000 square foot house that my dad built, and then you know, things just kind of started going from there. And kind of fast forward, when I kind of got into the business, I was about 16 years old. And my dad, he wanted me to build windows and kind of learn the business. And I remember I went in there, and to this day, I'm not a mechanic type of guy. So I went in, I was smashing trucks, breaking things. And my dad had to be thinking, I must have a retard for a son, you know. I mean, I was a mess.
Yeah.
And so when I got to be about, 18, he said, hey, you want to maybe, go knock door to door, because it's, you're a young guy, good, you can kind of learn that. So I went out and canvassed, hi, I'm Jamie from West Coast Vinyl. We're going to be in the neighborhood, giving out free estimates. Just wondering, noticed you guys didn't have any windows in your home. Might be interested in a free estimate. Takes about 45 minutes of your time. I came back with 12 appointments,
wow, which
was crazy, and 8 of them sold. So my dad was like, okay, no wonder you were just breaking everything back. You're a sales guy, you're just like me. And so then he moved me into that part, and it was kind of nice because I kind of found myself,
Yeah.
And I remember too, I thought about, going to college too. And my dad said to me, he said, well, what do you want to be? And this is before I thought about doing that. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe get a business degree or something. And he was like, what could those people teach you that I couldn't? I'm a successful businessman. And I was kind of like, yeah, but he goes, look, if you want to go and you want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, you need a degree for that. But if you want to learn business, which was his way of saying, I want you to come in my business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Right. And I knew that.
Yeah.
And so then I went down that road and then started selling and got into it. And I was really lucky because I got to work with my dad. He's passed away now, but it was really, really neat. And I had people say to me, God, how do you work with your father? You know, I'd fight like my dad all the time. He was like my best friend. I loved him. I missed him all the time. But it was great. I mean, we had such a good relationship, you know, and I'm lucky because a lot of people don't get to do that.
True.
You know,
That's huge.
And he was like an idol to me. I mean, I looked up to him. He didn't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, you know, and he built that place up, you know, and he was frugal, you know, he was pretty tight. But I think my big problem is that I didn't act that way, but I think, you know, growing up, once we started getting some money, I was a little spoiled and took things for granted. I remember saying to my friends when I was 16, my dad brought me a brand new Honda Prelude, 1984. And it was about 12 grand back then. And I remember the kids would be driving a Camaro or whatever they were driving. And I'd say, oh, your dad bought you a car too? And they were like, no. I had to get a job and buy my own. What are you talking about? You know,
Yeah,
I just thought everyone's dad bought him a car.
Right.
You know, I just didn't know.
Yeah,
you know, and I remember I tried to like, you know, downplay that stuff as I got older. Right. If I met a girl, I didn't want to show her my parents' house. You know, and so I was trying to. So I always kind of stayed, you know, humbled though, but. I think growing up with that made me not be as ambitious as I could have been, you know, if I'd have grown
like
up
saying
in
you didn't have to fight as hard as your dad.
And because my dad didn't have anything, and
Right.
his dad died when he was like 15.
Yeah.
And he had to, you know, really. So I just kind of thought I took things for granted, I guess. I mean, I knew I was lucky and in the situation I was in, you know, but. And that doesn't happen to everybody. I mean, some people are in that situation and they you know, take it to another level, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of did that, and I partied, and I drank, chased girls, and I was just kind of a playboy until my dad got cancer and got sick.
How old were you at the time?
When I was in my late 30s. You know, when that happened. So, I mean, I was, and I always worked. I had a house, but I didn't really, I had some money in the bank, didn't do any investments, although I had a lot of opportunities and stuff. But I just didn't do it. I just kind of worked and just kind of rode along like, you know, someday I'm going to have this or I'm going to have that. And that's how I lived. And that's why, you know, what you're doing, you know, is smart. I wish I would have done that. And finally, when my dad, you know, he had cancer, and I was partying and doing drugs and stuff, and I, you know, I got to a point where I'm like, look, I got to grow up and I got to clean up, and it kind of came to a point where if I didn't do that, you know, there was going to be nothing left. I mean, if I didn't straighten up, I was gonna, and that was like a punch in the face. And when that happened, I really started saying, okay, I got to buckle down and kind of moving forward after my dad passed away. That business was kind of, because my dad wasn't there all the time, so it was already kind of underwater a little bit. You know what I mean? And so when I got in there, it was kind of coming into something that really... A lot of people even told me, you need to shut this thing down and rent this building out and, you know, just move on with your life. And so kind of out of pride or not looking at it, you know, what would be best for me or my family, I was kind of looking at, this is what my dad, would want. So I tried to make that thing go. And again, you know, I was signing personal guarantees, you know, if we were going to do something. My brother wouldn't do it. And my lawyer would say to me, you're crazy. You know, if he won't sign it, shut that thing down. And I had
you're putting your own house up as collateral.
Oh, everything. And I had my wife in there. Yeah. And make a long story short, when the smoke cleared, you know, doing that for about 5 years, I was opening the mail and I saw a thing from the IRS,
So like history repeating itself.
Yeah, that wasn't getting paid. And I sat to my wife and I said, "What's going on here?" She starts crying. She didn't want to upset me. I said, "Look, there's stuff you can do, but you can't with the IRS." So come to find out, we owed, excuse me, $500,000.
Oh.
I mean, I was, talk about wanting to go drink again.
Wow.
I was so stressed out, and I was just freaking out. And I mean, talk about soul searching. I had to sit down and really sit down and figure out what I was going to do. So I went home, and after, went to a lot of meetings and a lot of different things, and I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to have to, my brother wanted to shut it down, rent the building out, and slowly pay that back. I said, interest, penalties, I'm 40 something, no friggin' way, it's going to take forever. So, and he was no help through this. So finally, when I got I shut the thing down, and I got him to finally go along with this, and this is where, having my parents have some money, it was lucky. So we ended up selling the building up there for $1.2 million. Okay. And so we were able to pay off the debt, and then, then my mom had the bulk of that, and then my brother and I got something. And then what I did is, after we cleaned that place up, and he's still to this day, just upset with me. He can't move past it. But anyways, so then I went and I bought the website, because my tech guy had said, and I almost forgot to tell you, before we closed, I hadn't sold for a while, so I went back out and sold some deals right before the doors closed. And my brother came in and said, we're not going to be able to close this if you're going out knocking deals down. And I knew the good thing about that is it kind of, and I put those deals on through West Coast, but I was like, look, I still got it. I'm a good sales guy. Right. So once I bought that website, my guy said that website was developed in '97, and Google ranks a website organically by how old it is. So they said, we can get you on the first page and get you ranked real well. So I bought that website for like $4,000 from my mother. And what I did is I took the name and I changed it to WCV Windows. Okay. So I mean, totally different company.
Instead of West Coast Final.
At WCV.
Windows,
and so I still had people call up and want warranty stuff. So I had to say West Coast Final. I mean, it's very nice. Helped them any way I could. Yeah. West Coast Final is closed, and had to go through that. And then there were some people that called up and they would get the company confused, and I would explain it. But eventually, the Attorney General, I got a letter from them saying that there was an issue with that. So I got to figure either my brother or somebody who was mad at me, called Bob Ferguson and told him this. So anyways, I just take
once again, don't trust the government.
So I would. There's another thing. So I would take it and I would just throw this thing in the garbage. Every time it came to my P.O. box, I'd just throw it in the garbage. And finally,
it was the Secretary of State saying this person had a warranty with West Coast Final. You need to honor it. Is that the gist of it?
Well, what they were upset about is they were saying that there's still. The website was changed, but there were a couple little things on there that indicated, like there was some stuff on there that I didn't even notice. It would say all my guys are subcontractors, but it would say something like employees, which they weren't. And so again, this guy would have never known. I mean, it was just me. I was so small. Yeah. So someone said that to him. So we went back and forth on that. Long story short, basically, it cost me a lot of money through my attorney just to have to handle it. But basically what they did is they said, you have to change that website so that it's all your stuff on there, which I wanted to do anyways. I mean, I thought it was
still
anyways.
Get to keep the actual website.
He said the website, the domain name says West Coast Final, but it has all your stuff on there. When somebody clicks on it, that's fine. And you have to put on there that you're getting your windows from Lindsay Windows. Your siding, you're using Hardy siding, or you're using K-Can vinyl. That's where, So it
just has to say it on there. It has you guys manufacturing your
own. Right. Yeah. So I put all that on there, gave him his extortion money, his $2,000. So paid them off. And and then after that, things
government.
And then things started to go though. I made in 4 months, I put $40,000 in the bank.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so
net.
net
After
and so from there things, and I thought to myself, I was kicking myself. I'm like, why didn't I do this a lot? But one of the things I learned through the program is you can't live in the past. Right. And I've really learned, to live in the moment. And I read a lot of books on guys that were successful too. And those guys, if they have a bankruptcy or something, they don't dwell on the past. Right. They move forward. It's like a football player. You have a bad game and you throw 4 interceptions, you move forward. You can't live in that moment. You got to just, and that's what I did. And when I did that, I mean, things just started to go and just got better and better and better. And, business, I mean, it just took off, and then I got some real estate, and so I got some rental income, and it just, in 2.5 years or 3 years.
Like 3 years ago now?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I went from barely having anything in the bank, owing the IRS $500,000 to having $400,000 or $500,000 cash in the bank. I own a 7,000 square foot rental commercial building in Lakewood. Awesome. And my house is completely paid for. Nice. I have no debt. My business makes $150 or better a year, and then I have 20% ownership in a Section 8 26 unit housing in Eastern Washington.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, just it was so fast that it turned around and. But I think I always had that, but to be honest with you, I didn't act on it because growing up in the environment that I did, not blaming my parents, but
there just wasn't a lot of pressure, and that's how your parents wanted it probably.
Yeah,
they didn't want you to have that stress or anxiety.
Right. My dad said he would tell me, he said, man, I have nightmares sometimes that I'm poor again. I mean, he would tell me that stuff, and my dad, he had this desire to have. A lot of money, but he used to tell me, I hope you kids never have to go through that, Right. So, but
I got a question on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
I know I've been talking.
I know we're trying to soak it up as much. And before I forget my questions, that's why I kind of.
I think I know what it's gonna be.
Yeah. So I have two. I have two specific ones. One, I want you to answer in just like a minute or two.
Okay.
The other one you can kind of ramble off on. So, you talk a lot about how you were brought up in a lucky environment per se, or in a very blessed environment, right? And there's a lot of people like that, and there's a lot of people that are like that and they fuck it up, right?
Yeah,
just straight up. Yeah. So then, how does someone who's brought up in an environment like that get that hustle?
Well,
how did you do it?
Yeah. Well, let's use my brother. My brother.
It's the Goofus and Gallant.
Well, it's funny.
Highlights magazine from a long time ago. But there's the brother who does what he's supposed to do, and then the one that's fucking off all the time.
Well, and my brother, he has assets and has things, but he only has what he has through my parents. I mean, if he didn't have the parents that we had, I don't know if he would be sitting on what he's sitting. And he's got 5 rentals, his house is paid for. And he still complains about what he could have had because of the building we had to sell and all that. And I think with me, I picked up from my parents a work ethic. And I'll tell you, I think where I got that is because I saw the environment I had, and most of my friends, had to work at McDonald's and had to do, and I saw that, and I played like, kind of my thing down. I was like, why should I have it so easy and everybody else, so in that, I said, I have to work and I have to, so I kind of developed something that my brother, he never really developed. So I did pick up a real good work ethic and follow through too. And also too, something that I don't think my brother, I cared about, if I have an employee or a customer, I really care about them. And I want to make sure they're taken care of. And I know a lot of guys are just like, as long as I get my money and do this, whatever. Yeah. I'm not like that. If somebody calls and they have an issue on anything, I take care of them. you know. So I think that's where I got that push, because I kind of just saw, you know, what my friends had, and you know, I just didn't want to be this spoiled, hand everything to me. So I wanted to kind of be like everybody else in that respect, and so but that got me, you know, to have that push.
And I think that you earlier had said that when you were 18 you had went out, got 12 appointments, and 8 of them closed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge deal for anybody, is to find something that you're good at, because not everybody's going to be good at that. Vernie and I, we're good on the phone. I mean, that's what our job is. We're really good. We're just making people feel comfortable, being personable, you know, just keeping that conversation, you know. We both watch each other do that. We used to work at a bank together, and so we get that part. But not everybody's good at that. So I think it's, you found something you were good at when you were 18. Then you have confidence. Just like in sports, if you're good at this certain sport, you're going to want to play it. You're going to want to do it. So you get that kind of fire.
And if you haven't noticed, I love to talk, and so I was
clearly, which we need. We have content.
I was and when I was in junior high, I was voted friendliest. I was homecoming king. So my brother's an introvert. I've always been kind of outgoing. I love people.
Yeah, and who knows what would happen if your brother would have found what he was passionate about. Maybe he just didn't have the chance to do that.
Yeah,
you know?
He was pretty good with computers. And I told him he should have some kind of, like, you know, thing where people call him up and he goes in and debugs it or does whatever. Yeah. And he's self-taught, you know, so he's really good at that. But he doesn't like people, and I love people. Yeah, so you know, and he's not. I mean, I got to watch myself, because I'll be in a house, and that's a big part of how I close deals, you know, and because people buy from you, you know, and sometimes I'll be like, okay, I got to go now. Shut up. Got to get out.
Yeah, exactly. So you got 3 hours. Yeah, exactly. What's your other question?
Yeah. So this is my other question, because we can keep going on.
I know.
And I know Mike has more questions. So you briefly mentioned that there was opportunities while you were partying, and dicking around.
My radar too.
That you wish you wish you would have invested in.
Yeah.
What were some of those ideas?
Well, I had a chance. I had a buddy of mine in the late 80s told me to buy Microsoft. And, you know, I said, what the hell do I know about stocks, you know? And he bought some, and he's got millions now, and he told me to buy that. And I've had real estate stuff that came by, and stuff that also I tried to get my father. My father they overbuilt down in Palm Springs, and he could have bought these condos for $190,000 in the early 90s. And a buddy of mine was building down there. He called me up, you know, of course I didn't have the money then, you know, to do that, but my father did. And I said, Dad, I mean, it'd be nothing for you to buy 5 of these things. I said, in 5 years, they'll be worth $500,000-$600,000. I mean, you know, well, it's in California. I said, but he wouldn't do it. Yeah. And of course they ended up selling for $500,000, $600,000, you know, so a lot of stuff like that just that came by my way. But again, I was too busy partying, and I wasn't thinking of personal stuff. You know, I was just thinking, my father's, you know, doing that, and I work at the business, and someday, you know, that's all going to come to me. It was, you know, it just, I wasn't thinking like I think now, you know. So if an opportunity came now, I would take it, you know, if it was worth taking it. Where I just wish I was, you know, I wish I could go back to that kid and say, hey, you know,
What would you tell him?
Well, I would tell him that life's short, and that there's more to life than, you know, chasing girls and partying, you know, and that I mean, money isn't the only thing, but it sure makes life easier. Yes. So I would have tried to, you know, I mean, and that's what sometimes my wife will say stuff to me, and I tell her that, you know, that it's, just to give you an example, my kid, I bought my wife a new Subaru, and she rear-ended someone. It wasn't real bad, but basically, my friend owns a body shop, so I didn't want to run it through the insurance because it would have kicked it up, you know. It's already high enough with having my daughter on there. So I paid $1,100 cash to have that fixed. And the other lady, she didn't have the insurance stuff, but she called up screaming and, you know, had a whatever on the back of her car. So I had to give her $600 and some, you know, cash to have that fixed. So you don't have any money. I mean, the average, I think it's, 60% or 61% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their savings. So if I didn't have that, just that little thing would have been a problem. So throw money at it. Right. You know, problem gone. Yeah. So for me, kind of what I have in my life, I have what I want. My dad, you know, he always wanted more, but I'm comfortable. But for me, money is something to take care of my family, and if there's a problem, most problems you can take care of with it. So for me,
the ones you can't are the worst kind of problems. Like lose a leg or something. Exactly. Penis cancer. I don't think that's a thing, but now I'm going to be haunted by it. I've got some questions.
Yes,
because you said that instead of going to college, you started working for your dad. So I want to know a little bit about how he learned. Is there any books that he lived by, or who was his teacher, and then what are some of the highlights that you learned from him that he really was trying to drive into you to, like, hey, this is what's going to separate us from everybody else, kind of thing.
He went into all of his friends were going to Korea and they were coming home in boxes. So he went into the Coast Guard. He hated boats, but he went into the Coast Guard because you have to do 3 years instead of 4. So he went and did that. And when he got out, he started canvassing, like I was talking about, door to door. And he was canvassing for a sales guy, and he fell in love with the business. I mean, he did a lot of other little things, but he was just like me. I mean, he could barely screw in a light bulb, But when he canvassed and got into sales, he loved it. And so he got into home improvements, and he did that, and that was in his 20s, I believe, when he got into it, and he just stuck with it. I mean, he found himself. He even told me he went down to California in his early 20s, and he was down there for a while, and he said, well, I was down there for about a year, I didn't get discovered, so I came back,
to be famous.
So he just saying he got lucky and kind of found himself, and I asked him if he ever thought about going to college or doing anything, and no, he wanted to go to work, but he did tell me always he wanted a lot of money. He was born in the Depression,
yes,
and he had that desire to that drive,
Yeah, like an absolute desire is something that I hear from so many of our guests.
Yeah.
I can't remember who it was, but one of them was talking about when I was a kid and I was playing with the toy cars, I wouldn't pick up the little truck, I'd pick up the shiny red one. Yeah. That's true. So it's about wanting that, having that. So but having the desire is the seed of whatever you're going to do. That's where it all comes from. That's what, keeps you going. In my job, it's having the desire for my goals, my financial goals are what'll keep me on the phone at 11 o'clock at night or up late doing an email or whatever. It's that desire. So I totally get that.
And you were asking my dad, I guess his thing was he just told me to he'd drop little things and say, if you quit drinking, the sooner you quit doing that, the better things are. He would drop little hints on that, and he said he would tell me to invest and do different things and buy into this, and he was trying to steer me on the path I was on. He was trying to get me on the path that I'm on now, and that's what he was trying to do. So, he knew I had the work ethic. I would say I'm a better salesman than he ever was, but he was a real good businessman. Better than to take care of myself the way I have it now, it's fine. But to have, he had 100 employees, and to do that,
wow.
It's just not. I'm more like my mom, and I don't think I could. That's just I can't. I couldn't do that. I don't think. There's certain people, and he was good at that. And everybody loved him. Working for him. People like me too, but they would do anything for my father. They just loved him. So. And he had, my cousin was in the business, and he tried to put him into a position, and he would talk down to the installers and everything.
Oh, okay.
Used to get my dad so mad. He would say, you know, he would say, Jeff, who do you think you are? You know,
Yeah.
just because a guy builds windows or hammers the nail, you're no better than he is. And that was another thing too. My dad always kept everyone on the same level. You know, he never talked down. I remember he told me that when I was little too. He said, you know, just because, you know, he's in the back building windows, you know, you're no better than him. You know, maybe that's where I got, you know, kind of being humble.
Yeah, I think so. That's a really good one. Because, one of the things that my mentor used to always tell me, because of my presentation, it used to be horrible. Which is hard to believe because I'm really personable in person, but on the phone, it used to just be disrespectful. And
really?
So, yeah, really. So, and I didn't even catch it until he was listening to me. He's like, is that how you talk to people on the phone? I'm like, yeah. He's like, no, you have to change that. So,
how are you?
Well, I think it was just more like too fact and not enough compassion and not relating to them. So not taking any time to say, oh yeah, I do something like that, or yeah, I've been through that, or whatever. Just real like trying to get to the point kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so the words that always go off in my head are treat everybody with dignity and respect, like to keep that as the mantra.
Yeah.
And I think for some reason it's easier in person because I'm right here, but on the phone there was a disconnect for me.
Yeah.
And so I just had to translate it to bring some of those skills. Building rapport and just showing people that I do care, you know.
And you're right. It's different on the phone because when you see someone in person, you know, you can see their their face. And just like when I walk into someone's house, I can kind of morph my personality. You know, the first thing I do when I walk around, measure the windows, I look. I mean, you know, are they a hunter? Are they a fisherman?
Is there a bong on the table?
Yeah, there is that sometimes. Yeah, so it's but I like what I do, so and that helps too. Yeah. I know a lot of people that do stuff and they really they don't like it. I like it, so yeah.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah. You got any more questions?
I don't think so.
I know. I feel.
Yeah,
like
we got 35 minutes.
I know that was.
I just been yakking.
Dude, that's good.
Yeah, I know.
We didn't have to pull any information out of you.
What did you have to do that with?
Well, no, Glenn was pretty good too. Yeah.
Glenn likes to talk.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a great talker as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Okay.
Wrap it up, baby.
All right, I'll wrap it up. Okay. All right, so some of the big takeaways for me today are keep your eyes open. Really, the biggest one for me that's really hitting me, and I think it'll hit you too, is follow your heart in the situation. Don't make a decision based on fear. Don't look back and say that I did this and this because I was afraid of what would happen. You want to be able to look back and say, I did this because this was what my heart was telling me to do. This is what I was good at. And don't be afraid to try something. We've heard many times before, take an idea. These ideas are kind of like magic, like gold that's coming out of the air. Take this idea and run with it for 6 months. Give yourself the chance to actually see if it succeeds because you might surprise yourself. And I really believe that if you have a desire to do something, that everything around you is saying yes. You just got to take that first step and watch that the doors will open.
Cool. Yeah. And don't chase girls.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. Or maybe just a couple. All right, guys. Lifestyle investing, where we invest based off our lifestyle to build a future lifestyle. Jamie, Mike, myself. Peace.